questions about them? So this we talked about, no national license and no reciprocity between states. The nice thing is states are generally starting to align better on licensure. So if you are an LCMHC and you've taken both of your exams, you are eligible for licensure in most states if you're licensed in in Vermont. So even if you have to have test scores submitted and things like that, you're still going to pay a fee, $100 or a little more. But you can get licensed in other states. A lot of states are lifting a residency requirement, so you don't have to live there in order to practice there, and that's in recognition of telehealth. So it's much easier to get licensed in other states than it has been before. Again, you want to look at your, the norms in that state, how they practice in your discipline.
You said license has 2 tests. What 2 tests?
Yep. So you're a social worker, right?
No.
LCMHC.
Yes.
Okay. So the NCE, and then somebody help me with the acronym. Yeah. What they said.
Yeah, because we only had one. I did mine like.
So you were grandfathered in with the second test, then probably.
Yeah, it was just a Vermont state at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 national exams. Social workers, what do you guys do? Do you have a national exam?
Yeah.
Okay. You have a national exam. Okay. So you have the national. That is pretty standard. There are some states that make up their own tests, and it's really interesting. But those 2. So I'm similar. I have 1 test. The state of Missouri is where I was originally licensed in the states of Missouri and Kansas. They required the NCE only. But I was licensed long enough by the time I came to Vermont. Vermont's one of the few states that has reciprocity based on years.
Yeah.
So I was able to be licensed here as well as those other 2 under a licensure. So it's just based on what state you're seeking to be licensed in. Other questions?
Are there other states that have reciprocity with Vermont?
It's a great question. It is very, it's very unique, and it's not even like regional. It's just based on that particular state, because counselors can be called lots of different things in lots of different states.
Yeah.
LPCs, LCMHCs, LCPCs. I mean, there's a list of them. It's incredible.
Other
There's no
state
state
is-
that automatically has reciprocity with Vermont.
I don't believe there's a sort of automatic. You wouldn't be able to say, check, I'm licensed in Vermont, good to go. You would have to still, they would send a licensure verification to Vermont, and then you might have to prove education. Some states you have to send test scores, even if you've taken them a long time ago. You have to have proof. So it's still a pretty involved process. So it would be really unusual, I would think, for someone to say, I'm going to get licensed in all 50 states. Great idea. I mean, that would be expensive, and it would be a lot to keep up with. You'd have to hire an assistant just to keep up with that. But if you, say, wanted to spend time in Florida, and you wanted to be able to practice in Florida with Florida clients, then you might say, I'm going to get licensed in Florida. We're going to go to the Carolinas, and I've got a buddy there who I'm going to practice with them from February to April or something. Yeah.
Okay. I'm aware that, like, the American Counseling Association and the National Board of Certified Counselors has been lobbying to have a federal license.
Yes.
But the NBCC also has the National Clinical Mental Health Counselors exam separate from the
Yeah.
MHC.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, in looking at telemental health, do you think that would ultimately maybe evolve into not having to do this, get licensed, and then try to meet standards at different stages of licensure in different states? And do you think that could replace the requirements for state licensure?
I think it's hopeful. I think that now that we're seeing, 5 years ago, the thought of practicing in a state you didn't live in didn't make any sense. An exception to that might be when we lived in Kansas City, Missouri. Half of Kansas City is on the Kansas side, and the other half's on the Missouri side. So the city is split among 2 boundaries. So the states had different licensure types. In Kansas, as an independent practitioner, you couldn't diagnose and treat, but you could be a counselor. I was like, how does that work? But in Missouri, you had full authority. So you had to be It was just really interesting the way that is, and I think the ACA was the one that had a really nice article that just talked about how ridiculous it is that counselors have a paragraph of different things we're called, different things that are licensed, and they're not the same. They don't afford the same rights, the same responsibilities. It's different state to state. There's no national exam that's really accepted. Some states create their own, and it makes a mess. So now that we're going to see telehealth really emerge in the market over the next 5 years, and maybe 10, but I think it's going to move faster than that. I think the idea of a national license or companies accepting a national license and then licensing boards allowing either reciprocity or some other alternative process, I think it makes sense that they would move in that direction. It seems like a direction to put energy into, definitely.
They did it with the hurricanes. They relaxed the licensing rules because they were asking people to get down, to Texas and to Florida to work emergency, and they relaxed the licensing rules. They just wanted any mental health counselors anywhere down there.
That was the licensing boards were saying they would expedite the process for those particular applicants. Not for everybody in the world, but you had to go through the Red Cross.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was a member of the Red Cross, so they said they relaxed and we could just go with that.
Wow. Okay, so some examples of
So
that.
hopefully that'll
Of response.
filter into this.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we talked about this. Questions about practicing licensing directed to your license board, not only in your jurisdiction, but in the client's jurisdiction too, for clarity. This is a statement from the American Telemedicine Association that talks about consistent with jurisdictional laws in both the state in which they're practicing and where the client is receiving care. So again, I haven't necessarily seen this in all the local licensure codes, but it is accepted practice-wise. When those larger companies like American Well are credentialing, they do all the credentialing for their contracted staff and their employees. They are facilitating that process of licensure.
So this is in contradiction to the previous thing, where you could have a Vermont client who's traveling and they're in Colorado wanting to do phone or video sessions. They're receiving the services in Colorado. So we would have to look at the licensing laws in Colorado.
So that would be a temporary situation where that client is not intending to reside in that state. That client would still be a resident of Vermont. So you would be within the guidelines to do that. The client is yours. The client is a Vermont client. The client is traveling for business. So this is specific. This is more specific to engaging in a client or taking on a client who either resides in a different state or transitions, moves to another state sometime during your care. And I would even extend that to say if your client's going to have an extended absence from Vermont for some reason, or they're going to go work for a few months or something like that, you would want to check just to make sure that you don't wind up in the wrong side of that. Does that help? All right. So I love this. I ran across this article at Talkspace. Talkspace is a company that uses counseling and asynchronous communication. So communication that the client provides, and then it just sits there in a private space, what they call a room, for the practitioner. And then the practitioner logs into that client's space. And it is not live video, it is not synchronous in any way, it's this back and forth. It looks very much like texting on the screens, and clients have an app on their phone, or there's also a computer site where clients do this. But I love the way that they talked about online therapy. Talkspace, their very cool marketing is therapy for the way we live today. So they're really hitting that market of texters that have something happen and they want to tell their therapist and they don't necessarily need a response right back, but they want to put it out there while they're thinking about it. And that's what these rooms are in their platform. So I love the way that they talk about this. So in-office therapy is expensive. Okay, e-therapy is low as $32 a week, depending on the service and plan you choose. That attracts some people. I don't know that that's consistent over telehealth, but it is certainly one of their marketing platforms is that in-office therapy is expensive. In-office therapy is expensive for you. We have rent, we have furniture, we have stuff, we have EMRs, we have file cabinets. Like, these cost us money. And when we transition part of our practice onto a telehealth platform, there is an opportunity to have less cost in bricks and mortar pieces in that therapy space. Other things that I thought were interesting here, we've talked about commute. People that work. People will work far away from home here in Vermont. So people that work being able to be at therapy. Some people like e-therapy, and some insurance companies don't cover this kind of therapy. So texting, phone calls, things like that are not covered by insurance companies, at least at this point. People that want to engage in that either have to cash pay, or they choose, they come to the office even though that's not their preference. The stigma of in-office therapy, that's certainly not a problem. I think we were talking at lunch about individuals who are really concerned. Maybe they have a very prominent position in the community, or they're a business owner, and they don't want to be in our waiting room, or they don't want to pass people in the hallway, or maybe they're a teacher at the local elementary school, and they don't want to sit down next to the kid that was in their class last year. So this is a way to protect people. Doing telehealth does, can relieve some of that tension or some of that stigma or reasons people might not want to be in the office. Clients are more comfortable and open when they're at home. That's certainly be more comfortable. Text or message-based therapy allows clients time to structure their thoughts. Okay, so that's some potential there. Easier for clients to cancel, reschedule, or change their therapist within a network of online therapists. So if you were to choose to contract with one of the larger credentialing companies, you clients could be rotated among therapists if necessary. Some clients want shorter sessions. Certainly if you have a 30-minute check-in with someone and you haven't had to go into the office, open the office, turn the lights on, stow your stuff, start the computer, and then have a 30-minute session and then pack it all up and go home, you might be more willing to do a 30-minute check-in with someone that doesn't require that kind of preparation. Clients don't have to cancel if they get sick. We've talked about that. Extra benefits for clients who encounter less triggers if they stay at home. So this could be a good thing or not. I mean, I'm sure with clients who struggle with anxiety, at some point we do want them to make progress in treatment, come out of their house. So we'd have to watch for this being enabling or a block to treatment. It benefits people who cannot drive. It is going to be an option for people with disabilities, and people in abusive relationships can do so without the other partner knowing. From an asynchronous standpoint, there are unique benefits for therapists. Therapists can travel, easy to send messages. So obviously some of these things are a little salesy, and they're specific to this particular website. But I think they have some nice ideas about some reasons why it makes sense for us as counselors to look at what kind of things can we do in our practices to accommodate people in these ways, and to use this technology, use some form of technology that works with us and with our practice to be more able to offer this to clients.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Sarah? How about therapists paid?
So in this particular platform, the clients subscribe to the platform, and then therapists are paid a percentage of client fees for that. So this is a really non-traditional model in that everything is literally, it is completely asynchronous. And this is actually prohibited on this particular platform. You can't actively instant message or anything like that. The pay is not, this is not a golden egg, but it is also, we're in the wrong field for that. But this is also much less intense and much less time intensive than an hour-long session. But certainly, if you're going to do this, you'd want to be able to be efficient, a pretty good writer, fast typer. So for someone who's not any of those things, something like this would not work well.
So I don't really understand, so a client pays their $32 a week. They could go to as many therapists as they want during the week. And you get a percentage of how much they pay or how much time you spend with a variety of therapists.
Yep. So in this particular platform, a client is assigned to a therapist. Now, even though something like this is still loosely defined as therapy and the company is choosing to identify it as therapy, they are also saying we will give clients to therapists licensed in that state. So they're voluntarily following those licensure laws. Then the client would have a subscription, and then that therapist would respond to client messages on a certain frequency. So not every message all the time, it's not like getting text messages, but they would log into a secure space and then respond to those clients' messages over the course of the week.
Content.
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
sort of concerned because 80%, what we know about human communication is about 80% is nonverbal.
Yes.
And that often, one of the big issues with social media is people miscommunicating
Yes.
and misinterpreting. So just from a clinical therapeutic perspective, I'm listening to you and I'm going, I'm pretty adaptive to environments, but therapeutically, I have a lot of huge ethical questions, how do you practice therapy this way, and then how do you even assess if you've got the same person you're meeting with at any given point or if there are multiple people.
Those are all great points, and it is, as I want to say, so this company would probably be offended that I said it's loosely defined as therapy, because I think they're super into that it is therapy and it's a way to do therapy, and I don't know that it's not, but I share some of those concerns with that as well. This is very popular and people love it, so it would be an ethical consideration for each client to say, can I practice like this? Or do I need those nonverbals? Like, is that just the core of who I am? And I don't believe that I could get behind this. And if so, then this would not be a good area of practice.
Well, I'm sort of questioning it as what are the...
Oh, sorry.
I'm questioning it as to what are the best practice standards for the field we work in.
Yep.
And if I look at what I understand about human communication, what all the research shows in terms of how people communicate and how much of that is nonverbal information. And that's a piece of what we use in assessment and diagnosis.
Yes.
And only 20% in a written form can even be interpreted close to what the meaning is. But when I hear this kind of model professionally, I really sort of wonder if, as a profession, we should look at the model and say, we need to not call this therapy. Because it's not clinical and it's not fully utilizing the best modes that we have to offer good therapy. Anyway, the therapist in me is having a bit of a response to this, especially in light of ethics, in light of what therapeutic standards are, and in light of what best interventions are.
Yep, absolutely. And I want you to keep that in mind because there are lots of different ways that are developing that are going under that threshold of therapy. So in being able to practice competently and being able to say, yeah, I can do that. I could do that. So if you used this particular platform and you got credentialed with it and you were excited about it and you had a client who said, so I'm here because I've had really awful trauma in my life. You might be like, oh, no. Like how do I write that to you? How do I pull that apart? If you have a college student that's like, oh, I don't really know, like, what am I going to be when I grow up? Maybe that's a different conversation. Maybe it's not. So these are the things that are challenging us as professionals. And one of the, watch how you're drawn. You know, watch, there's no golden eggs here. So all of these platforms require work. They all require strong therapeutic work. Remember, when you're getting credentialed, you're getting accepted to these, you are working under your license. I worked really hard for mine. I don't want to lose it. And I'm sure we probably all agree with that. So don't practice in an area that you can't get behind or in a way that you can't get behind. It is okay to pass on that opportunity. Okay? All right, here's your chart contents. These are the normal things that I expect you probably have in all of your chart. Assessments. So this is something I want you to consider in your practice. We're going to take a few minutes to talk about that at your tables. What do you do for assessment? And how do you translate that into telehealth? How do you assess clients? How do you assess depression? How do you assess anxiety or trauma? Is that just something you do face-to-face? You're good at it that way? Do you use any kind of assessment tools? Any norm reference tools that you need to figure out how do you do that with a client? Right? So take a few minutes at your table and talk about from your, we have a pretty wide, I think we cover most licensure types here. What do you use? And how do you do that? Or do you? Right? Take about 5 minutes. All right, folks, finish up. Let's report out. All right, so talking about assessment and electronic. Table 1, what did you guys come up with? Oh, a big sigh.
You miss some of the nonverbals.
Okay.
Because you're not getting a full body picture.
So how are you going to make up for that? What are you going to do?
Well, we did sort of.
Did
Yeah, we were like, did you do like full body scan? Did we take the leg shaking?
Okay, so the question was, how, they said you're going to miss a lot of the nonverbals. So my question was, all right, how are you going to make up with that? And the suggestion was, can you do a full body scan so I can see if your leg is shaking?
But we also did talk about that we could have assessment tools where there was the client-based version and what we're normally looking for. Email that assessment to the person, have them do it ahead of time, and then we could do assessment online with a comparative group, which might actually be more
Yep.
accurate.
All right, so what is being said is that there are to do something online, do it ahead of time. So email ahead of time so they have it and then send it back for a session. Yep, great. What do you guys think?
I think Gal,
We would like to chocolate.
I was thinking of going to reach. So,
you're waiting
just like this hydrant, it was
Yep.
That's what I think.
Okay.
they have this.
So tricky. So tricky. Okay. Tricky. All right. Table 3, what do you guys think?
Not that you're talking about everything else, but we were talking about, assessments. You can use like basic assessments. I guess like Carl was talking about how would you assess somebody? You could use the Beck Depression Scale.
Mhm.
Marianne and I would go right to the Enneagram and the Myers-Briggs and all those
Yep.
the ones. And Marianne works with elderly, so there's a scale for dementia.
Yeah. How would you do those? How would you integrate those into telemedicine?
Well, probably, a lot of these tests you can do online.
Yeah.
I don't know, with the nursing home and where they would do, but a lot of them you can do online.
Right.
And then you can have them, sit and discuss them with them.
Okay, great. And then last but not least, anything to add? No. Yep. So I like what you had talked about. Paul had said that he is anticipating using telemedicine when clients can't come to a session rather than as a major part of his practice. So some of those, you would keep the same process that you have and then just use paper as you use paper. Yeah. One of the tools I want to encourage you to check out is there is Pearson Clinical that we probably all get catalogs from, is one of the major test publishers. And the trend is moving that a lot of these assessments are online. And Beck has a robust group of assessments that are online. So they're online secure. So you would have a portal where you would log into, set up your client's name, date of birth, it would calculate the age, and then you would send the client a link of the assessment, or if you're using a Connors, for example, and you need parent input or teacher input, you would email those links, they would complete those, that data would pull back into that client portal, it would collate and self-score. So you could wind up with some really robust assessment data that way as well. All right, yes?
You know what it occurs to me as I listen to this is that there's really like a spectrum that's developing. It's like using, telemedicine as an adjunct to your practice, going all the way there, and for food, all the way to like fast food, what I would call fast health paradigm. Which is someone goes in, it's more like an emergency model. Because actually, Blue Cross Blue Shield has not done this, but has done some of this kind of practice. And, I've heard feedback from people, and they really haven't been, although they could be, very thorough. They ask questions that are very general, and it's not personal, and it doesn't capture, from what clients have reported to me, it does not capture the person and what they're going through. So I just want to name, like, part of me is like, seriously, like we're going in that direction. Part of it seems like it's a really good, I would probably use it in my practice as an adjunct. Occasionally somebody can come in, let's do this, I know them, they know me, I know if their leg is moving.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
I appreciate that let's do our best to stay balanced. The client that wants the personal connection may not be able to get that personal connection, either from life circumstance, they just can't right now. So this is a good plan B for them, and they eventually want to work towards being able to see you in your office and hold space like that. Some people, that level of intimacy and being in space together, they just can't do yet. And so I think it's great to always consider it as clients' needs change, then maybe telemedicine at some point does not become the right choice for a client, that they would do better transitioning into the office, or as therapy is done, some of the initial stuff can perhaps be done telemedicine-wise, and then as there's deeper work to do that requires that real in-person, then perhaps they transition to that and back. So I love the perspective of, hey, let's remember it's not all or nothing. There's a middle. I appreciate that.
I don't know if you've heard of it. Just recently I've heard about this, and I'd like to hear your input, is that there are prototypes now that there are actually computers who are programmed to be counselors and respond in the best way that, what best practice might look like for that presenting. What do you think of that? And
I think it's tricky. We've seen that in medicine for some years where there are decision trees. Client is, 6 months old and has a fever. Here's your options. The client has a rash or doesn't have a rash. So we've seen that kind of cut and dried decision making in medicine. I think it's always a cautionary tale that we have to make sure that we don't become those robots that we're like, oh, this is this, that's that. And that we lose that ability to hold space with people and care about them, because that's a large majority of the time. We are the one person they could come in and spill that really icky stuff, and we're like, yeah, that's hard. And we don't not call them again. They can come and do that work and make their lives better with us. So, when I sit with a couple and they're like, okay, you've never heard this before, Sarah. Never. We are really broken. Okay, lay it on me. They're like, we fight about money. I'm like, yeah, so does everybody. They're like, no, but we really fight. I'm like, so does everybody. They're like, really? And so I have a way that I do that. I have a way that I start with that adolescent that comes in and says, Mama made me come. You ain't gonna make me talk. I got a way, I got a rut that I do that gets me to that client. So we all have some of those ways, and we've been in practice for a while, that we do depression this way, we do anxiety, we do resistance this way. But I think the personal factor is always, we've got to make sure that we're, our internal compass, we're practicing in those ways that make sense to us. So All right, I'm gonna turn it over to my tech team that are gonna show you some of this technology, and then we're gonna break. Okay, semi-tech.
So we're going to start off with DoxyMe here. So we've decided that Amanda is going to be our client and Christopher is going to be our therapist. So to start off, each has set up an account on DoxyMe. No, actually the client has not, but Christopher has. So what's going to happen is Chris is going to invite. Go ahead.
Chris just needs to give me his link. So right now, if you look at the top of that screen, it says doxy.me/lifemap1, and that is his unique address for DoxyMe. So if you sign up, you as a therapist will have your own unique address. So Chris gave me his address, so I don't have to make an account. It's totally anonymous from the client end. And I typed in that address into my search bar, and it popped up, welcome, please check in. So I will write my first name, apparently on my last initial, and I can check in. And if you look at Chris's screen, I should now be in his waiting room. I don't know, in that top corner. And it shows me that he is available for a chat right now. The clinician starts the chat from their end, so the client can't bust in on you. And here we are.
Great. So Amanda is seeing Chris on her screen. This is just what's coming up on
This is
each
my
of their
screen?
screens. That's Amanda's screen. So she's seeing a picture of herself and Chris in the main screen and vice versa here. Has,
Chrome, correct?
I am in Chrome.
Amanda's in Chrome.
What-
I'm using Firefox.
He's in Firefox. I'm in Chrome, he's in Firefox.
Safari doesn't work, I can attest to that.
Safari does not work with
For
that.
DoxyMe?
Yeah.
Okay. I think on the DoxyMe, do you have the DoxyMe sheet up? I think it tells you which browsers that they prefer. Firefox and Chrome, so I guess it works out well that he has Firefox and I have Chrome. So that's how quick that one is to start. It's very simple, it's very easy. You just give your clients your address if you want them to have it. And if Chris needed to, you want to take me a little message? The chat box at the bottom. If he needed to have me wait for a moment while I was in the waiting room, if he was finishing paperwork or on a phone call, he could type a quick message to me, and it would pop up on my screen saying, "Oh, we'll be with you in a moment," or, you know.
Is his, as he's typing that, is his image on your screen? Is he typing?
Not yet. See at the bottom, you can see
He has to press send before the words show up, because that's his face.
Right.
that's
his
where he's
words
typing, but it hasn't popped up for me
Right, but
yet.
his face is on.
His
Yeah.
face is on there.
Only because he started
He
the
started the
he started
session.
the chat already.
Right. Yep.
But maybe he's doing something else that he needs to say.
Yeah, but he could do this before he started the chat as well. So, and then my screen, do you see how it's red now down there in the corner? I can click on it, and he wrote, "I will be right with you." So, just kind of.
And I wonder, maybe there's some folks who haven't done Skype or FaceTime kind of messaging or anything like that. So if you notice, Chris is kind of out of his screen a little bit, but Amanda's centered up and Chris is centered up. You don't want to be too close to your screen, so it's all face. And you don't want to be too far back, so you're back here like I am. So
Yeah.
you want to kind of be, have a shoulder and head shot in this. You also want to be very aware of what's in the background. In your office, you certainly wouldn't want to have anything that's confidential.
Like a random man
Like a
behind
random
you.
person, like kind of walking.
Hovering behind you.
If you are working from a home office for some reason, you wouldn't want to have your kids kind of come in, be in the background or anything like that. You wouldn't want to have any paperwork showing. You wouldn't want to have anything, showing that you wouldn't want your clients to see. So.
Or right now, if you look over Chris's right ear, you can see part of the presentation. So if you have something behind you in your house, you wouldn't necessarily, what did you say, Sarah? If it was like your neighborhood user of the month or something, like your homeowners association person of the month, you wouldn't necessarily want that identifier if you're working at
It's
your
that
home
idea
office.
that, remember, if you're home, you have now invited your client into your home.
So whatever that space is, right.
So if you
Whatever
have a
space
picture
you're
of
in.
your kids on the wall, if you've got you've got something that shows a picture of your house, or maybe you were gardener of the year, or whatever, you need to be careful careful of that for whatever identity-wise that you're doing. So just be mindful of that.
So can, before we answer that question, I want to just point something out here. Can either of you maximize the video screen? Because this is a little bit misleading. Your client would not see your tabs open.
Yep, I'm maxed.
So if you look on Amanda's screen, and we lost this one here. So this is what actually, yep. If you look on